On this episode of Industry Relations, we have, I think, one of the most important conversations about the future of online real estate. This is Industry Relations, a podcast that's at the intersection of real estate and technology from an insider's perspective, with Rob Hahn and Greg Robertson.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Industry Relations with Rob and Greg. This is Rob Hahn, obviously, and my co-host Greg Robertson entering the photo. We didn't do Casual Friday
Rob.
today. Hola, how are you?
All right.
Oh, man. Yeah, your uniform is on, I could see, but I went with pink, right? So that we would contrast.
The pink hue doesn't really show up on camera as well as I know it would. So
yeah, that's true. But, you know, real men wear pink, so I'm a roll with that. But you look well rested. You look tanned because I understand we're going to get into this, but you were at an event this week.
That's right. It was a kind of a local event. It was out in Palm Springs, so I enjoyed just having to drive out there. Mm-hmm. It's kind of interesting, like, with the pandemic and then the office closing and things like that. I don't really drive that much, and just having like an hour and a half drive, listening to music and a couple podcasts, not ours, and then not having to deal with airports.
Yeah.
And all that stuff, and just arriving at the event. The event was held in Palm Springs. It was called Inman Connect. Yeah. It was held at the Parker Hotel there, which is
lovely,
gorgeous property.
Yep.
And I'm not sure about Rested because it was, I didn't go big on the first night, but man,
You went hard. You went big.
I went big on the next night for sure. So I needed a day recovery after driving. It took me 2 hours to get home for various reasons.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, great event. It's the second time I've gone to it. Luckily, I had a kind of a holdover ticket that we had bought last in 2020 that got canceled, and it's one of my favorite events of all of them, and just a great time.
Yeah. How many people would you say?
Oh gosh. I don't know. I mean, I'm probably bad at guessing things. Over 100. I don't know if about 200, but over 100.
But still relatively small. We're not talking thousands.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, they keep it small. It's like it's supposed to be an invite only kind of thing, right?
Yeah. All right. So, what'd you hear? You disconnected.
I disconnected.
It's a cool event.
Yeah. I mean, so I think. The premise that I think that they put together, Brad puts together, I'm assuming, is that what they like to do is like to ask a big question, right? And it's, the questions can be ridiculous in a sense, right? But it's a big question, and then break it down into things. So the big question for the event is like, what is real estate going to be like in 2030, right? Which is, a huge topic that nobody can really answer. But then they break it down into different things like, what is diversity in real estate going to look like in 2030? What is real estate dating going to look like in 2030? So like different things below that. And the way they structure it is that the first night you have this welcome reception and they have a couple speakers and you do that. And then in the morning, everybody's divided up into different activities. Like there's an architectural tour that Picasso was hosting, looking at some of the mid-century architecture out there in some of their homes, horseback riding, a Jeep riding, 9 holes of golf, different things like that, right? Yeah. And so I was asked to moderate one of those questions, one of those activities, and it was Danae and I actually doing the 9 holes of golf. We were originally, I found out, on the hiking tour, and Danae had the foresight to go, we might want to switch us to something else besides hiking. We're better at golf than hiking. And Danae, if you're listening, thank you so much for that. That was a brilliant move.
All right.
We did 9 holes, and I talked to my foursome while we were golfing, so that at the end we could have this discussion and come up with some predictions what that would be like. And I gotta say, everybody got caught up in the spirit of what that was, because we had really great discussions outside there, the pro shop and on a couple tables out there with our our iced teas and everything. And then go back to the hotel. We had lunch. And then they had another couple speakers there. I forget his name, but a writer from the Atlantic. and some others. And then they had their moderators of those events, of those activities, I should say, go up on stage and kind of like reveal what their kind of conversation was like. So Danae and I, put a list together, and basically, we looked at things through, as far as, real estate data from, 3 different lenses. And we thought about commission compression, and the fact that we think that that's going to happen, and that definitely is going to affect real estate data. Although we didn't have some finite things other than just it had to be more efficient. We talked about smart homes and the data that is going to be will be somehow aggregated over time, and that will be different. We talked about the idea of fintech getting into, and it's not really, housing becomes this category, and you're going to go look for a house on some site, and it's not really going to be, it's going to be a mixture of short-term, long-term rentals, purchase, and co-ownership.
Okay. And
when you get to that kind of things, when that happens, what other kind of things are offshoots of that? Like, for instance, co-ownership with Picasso is something, but like if it becomes mainstream, then it's almost like you'll need an app or a place to, and I know that there's some out there that are kind of like this, but you'll need somewhere to go to find out people like you that want to co-own a house, maybe not cohabitate, but matching apps for those type of people, right? So but various types of things. So we kind of put those all on paper and kind of tag team on stage and gave our kind of predictions and had more conversation there, and just follow the rest of the group of the other moderators on that. Right. And then the next day we followed up with more kind of one-on-one meetings where you could not, if you were in a group you were more curious about another group, you could, sit on those kind of salon style. In a sense. And, that's my element, man. I mean, just like how we get to talk about the things that we're passionate about. Yeah. And the Parker's a great place because you walk around this kind of, almost it's enclosed jungle-ish. So it's out of a lot of it's out of the sun, and they got a fire pit here. They got these cool chairs and nooks and crannies here. And food was great, and drinks were flowing, and and everybody was bullshitting, and all the vendors were lying to each other. It was a great, it was a typical and great event there. Yeah.
So give me your top 3 takeaways, not just from your group, but that you've heard. 2030, real estate 2030, top 3 takeaways from this.
Yeah. So I was kind of putting it into a little rhyme here. I've written down here because I knew we were going to talk about it. The vibe was, that I think one of the top vibes was that the housing shortage was basically going to last until 2024. That's the kind of number we heard people were talking about, right? The other thing is that the way I have it written down here, the vibe was the housing shortage was going to last until 2024. Cash is king and listings are gold, right? So the cash is king side is that a lot of people there, and this is kind of a little bit interesting because I haven't heard a lot of this, that that a lot of people there thought that in the future it's all going to be cash buyers. So that could, these power buyer things would be the norm, right? And that seemed to be and then the other thing was listings are gold. I mean, it's so apparent. I mean, if you've got a listing, it's going to sell. Sure. And, everything is about getting a listing, right? And and the vendors are talking about, like, if you're going to an hours on market instead of days on market, in a sense, right? Are we prepared for that type of thing? Are there tools? I mean, do you need tools? Do you need to make a CMA? Do you need to, do some advertising or marketing? And that was kind of some of the discussions there.
All right.
And then one of the things that I really enjoyed, it was a short kind of interview, but Sean Black, who's the CEO of Knock, he was interviewed, and the interview was about a blog post he wrote that basically, I think the title was something like from Knock's journey from a $2 billion valuation to $220 million, $2 billion to 220. And he wrote a blog post in Cecilia. See, I always get it wrong. Sorry. Interviewed him, and he was as candid as his blog post was about that journey and all these little things that the business really hasn't changed fundamentally. They're still having success, but these macro things that happen, the Delta variant, the Omni variant, the SPAC market being, frowned upon, Zillow leaving the offers market, all these things add up to like no IPO and your valuation being, cut 90%.
Right.
And, it's just, and then you have to lay off, thousands of people. Right. And we've seen that in a lot of companies there. But I appreciate that as a business owner, listening to another, entrepreneur, business owner, talk about those tough things. Right. Because it really kind of cements in your mind that, it's tough out there, right?
Yeah, it ain't wine and roses, and
it isn't. No, it isn't. It's like what did one guy say? I mean, starting a company or running a company is like, it's either like you're the pit of despair or the height of joy, right? There's no in between sometimes. But yeah, I mean, again, it's very compact. It was really, Monday, and you leave, at 11 o'clock on Wednesday. So, very compact with that kind of thing. But
all right, so let's talk about these things, man, that you brought up. So why housing shortage until 2024? Like, that seems like a pretty specific date. Like, who came up with that and why 2024?
No, you know what? It's interesting because those two things kind of was, I haven't really heard anybody put a timeline on it before. That and that, like every buyer is going to be a cash buyer. Those are two things I haven't really heard before. In a kind of like an agreement type of sense, right? So I don't know if it was cognitive dip. Everybody was convincing themselves of these things, but I don't know if anybody really came up with any hard data to kind of support that. But that was just the vibe of what everybody was talking about. It's like, maybe 2025 sounded too long, but they didn't, definitely sentiment was, this is not over this year. Right. So maybe 2024 was a stretch.
It just seems optimistic to me is all.
Well, yeah, but you're on that thing of like every, we're having a housing shortage forever. Right. So, I mean,
no, not forever. Not forever. I mean, for me, I'm just, who the hell knows, right? Total speculation. I think housing shortage probably lasts until like 2050.
Well, that's crazy. That's 25 years or 27 years or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the reason being, I don't think the demographic impact really hits until about then. And it's the only, because we're not going to build more. I mean, that's not going to happen. Right. And
one of the themes there too was just this, as somebody was saying there, I probably should have mentioned this, is this one of the biggest transfers of wealth that the country's ever seen, with the boomers leaving that money to millennials, right? So and that having such a great impact on housing as well. And the difference, a lot of the millennials don't want the houses that are out there too, right? But that transfer of wealth is a big thing as well.
Yeah, I'm actually of the opinion that transfer of wealth is unlikely to have the impact that people imagine, unless we change some things like in the very near future. So let's just put it real simply, right? When will the boomers start dying off en masse? Right? Because how old are the boomers now?
Yeah. Was it the youngest 70s? Boomers like, 70 or something? Or not 70, that can't be right. Or the oldest boomers?
Let's see, I'm going to look this up. How old are boomers today? Okay, boomers are between 57 and 75 years old, right? Born between 1946 and 1964. So the oldest boomers are, say, 75, right? Older than that, I guess you're in the greatest generation.
Yeah.
Right? So that would be most of like congressional leadership, by the way. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. So boomers, I think, oldest are 75. Sure, some of them have died, but I don't think we really see them leaving this earth, mortal coil, and leaving their wealth to the millennials until probably the next 10 years.
Okay.
Right? Because again, advanced in medicine, and again, this isn't like wishing for. It's just human reality. Ain't none of us getting out of this life alive, right? So it's just reality. So I just think, let's say 10 years from now is when the mass transfer over the next 10 years will really happen. Cool. Right now, millennials are under 40% home ownership rate. So if the idea is over the next 10 years, as their parents start, dying off and leaving them inheritance and leaving them this wealth, it's going to affect housing. Well, I think most of the wealth is actually in housing, right?
A lot of it, I think so, for sure.
Right. So, I mean, unless we're talking about like the top 10% of boomers who have stock holdings or are company owners, like the vast majority of the wealth of boomers comes from housing. So they're going to have to leave housing for their kids. And I guess the question is, do those millennials want those, right? Or are they going to try and sell it? If they're going to try and sell it, we have this glut, like the inventory crisis will be over, right? Yeah, I don't know how that's all going to play out. But here's the more important part, and this is something I think I've been sounding the alarm on for a while, is why do we think that there won't be some sort of political action between now and then if homeownership is below 40%?
For millennials.
Right. And millennials would be the largest voting bloc, right? Because the boomers are dying off.
Sure. I mean, I don't, as you like to say in the beginning, who knows what's going to happen next year? Right. I mean, things are going to change so much. That's why, you kind of laughed at like, what's real estate going to be like in 2030?
2030, yeah.
Very, very, very tough to kind of like grasp around on these, grand statements.
I mean, it's interesting. And then the cash is king, that part makes me happy because, I feel like I might have an outside chance of still winning my bet. Right, where I said iBuyer's gonna be 60% of the transactions. Well, and people laughed. I said iBuyer includes the cash, the
power buyers.
The power buyers, and it's cool that they called it that. I think I was calling it like the bridge loan model, right?
Yeah,
not Pioneer.
Well, that was the whole thing about that category. They couldn't come up with a name, and then I think power buyers everybody settled on. Yeah.
So fine, power buyers. So if it includes that, then I'm really happy to hear that because I'm gonna win my bet. I think I have 3 years left on my bet. So
I don't know, 3 years for 60%. I don't know, man. I mean, that we'll see what happens there, but
we'll see what happens. But
it's just another model of, it's a financing thing, not really a real estate thing, right? I mean,
correct. But the same thing could be said for the market maker model too. It's just a financing thing. It's just having this big institution step in between the buyer and the seller, right, to create greater liquidity and greater transparency and greater convenience, right? Yeah. So I'm really happy to hear that. Listings are gold. I think that's interesting as well.
Well, listings are gold in any seller's market, right? So that's not a big thing there.
Yeah. Even in the buyer's market, man, even in the buyer's market, listings were still gold.
Yeah, I mean, I think every real estate book ever written, I don't know about mine, but it's got to say in there that says listings list to last. I think it's the saying, right? I mean, for sure.
Right. So, I mean, that doesn't seem like it's interesting that. So when you guys are talking about this 2030 vision, did you talk about macroeconomics at all? Things like interest rates and money supply and.
Well, I mean, everybody agreed that, interest rates were going to continue to go up, but everybody was also marveled that it didn't seem to affect the appreciation, so far. But we're, knocking on wood to see what would happen later on if it gets over 5% or something like that. But even then, it's still traditionally or historically, I should say, low, right? So, it's just a weird economy right now. I mean, we just got the jobs numbers and, added 430 million jobs, but, and gas is where it's at and inflation's where it's at. And it's so, what do you could pick one of those two things and like, just pull on that thread and see what happens. It's such a weird time. And that's one sense I got. It's like, everybody's just like, you get out of the, I think we talked about this before, you get out of Omicron, we're getting the masks off. We're starting to kind of relate and go back to human connection. And, you start talking about things, but there's a little bit underlying of like, it's like that dog that was hit by its master so many times. So these flinching, you're a little bit, sensitive to stuff. And I think everybody's not whistling through the graveyard, but just trying to keep a good face going forward and optimistic, but still cautiously optimistic, right? Because there's just still such a weird things going on right now in the world, in the country. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I was just curious because, obviously 2030, like, all right.
And the other thing is like, and, maybe we can segue into this.
Sure.
And, I it's like one of those things like I talked to you about where I'm pretty, I think that the goal of everybody should be like strongly held, you want to have this
strong opinions weakly held.
Strong opinions weakly held. Thank you. Okay. You came to that, right? And this is, I've been like on both sides of this damn issue.
Yeah.
And I think I need you, Rob, to kind of like set me straight or like put me somewhere, right?
Give it to me.
And this is about, and because there's companies right now that are, apparently after our talk with Mr. Campbell from Stevens, like they're making a bet on this kind of what it does, right? And maybe it's related in, maybe I'm a little bit, I need some clarity here, but about commission compression, mostly on what's happening with the DOJ, what's happening with the lawsuits, and how that factors into how real estate is practiced, right? And I think the first thing is just compensation gets taken out of the equation of cooperation and compensation.
Right.
There's a lot of people that think, oh, that's going to be the biggest thing. It's going to affect everything. And so many other people like, no, I'm going to pay somebody to help me buy a home.
Sure.
I want that expertise. And I don't think, I think there's so much inertia and there's so much tradition. There's so much like value to having a person help me in the largest purchase of my home that it's not going to affect a lot of things. Tell me where you stand, or maybe you don't stand anywhere, but
I have strong opinions on this, weakly held.
Okay, all right, yeah. So walk me through like how that is, and then if you could take those things and then tell me why you think how that relates to company like CoStar making the bets that they're making.
Okay, big one. All right, so I think I haven't seen anything to make me abandon my opinions on this. My opinion basically is that cooperation compensation will come to an end, all right? Or at least the mandatory cooperation compensation will come to an end through government action, right?
Okay.
Do I think that that's the right thing to do? I don't, because I'm not a fan of government. But I think it's going to come to an end, which means buyers will pay their own agents and sellers will pay their agents, right? And I think that's the part where most people can agree, I think, with that, honestly, because it just seems normal. It seems natural. And
okay, let me. Can I just stop there real quick? So, let's say that happens, right?
Yeah.
And matter of factly, like in the course of a transaction, right now the seller pays all that, and that's really just. God, I lost my train of thought. Somebody put something in the chat here. Hold on. That's really just basically a finance thing where since the seller is paying it all, that gets wrapped up into the mortgage, right?
Yep.
So that could also be solved if the buyer's paying a separate agent separately, just in the closing costs or something that will still be wrapped up into the financing of the home, right? So I'm not sure just that breakaway really changes anything. Agreed?
Okay, right. So the step one then is this breakaway happens.
Okay.
Right? And then step two. But before we get to step two, our producer is telling us that we got to ask once again for our audience to hit subscribe if you're on YouTube, because we want to get a name. We want a name right now. And we need to get to
we need 1,000. We need 1,000 subscribers to our YouTube channel to actually, instead of giving it like the ampersand VCX 753 question mark / to actually say industry relations. So we'd appreciate some help there, guys.
Right. So if you're listening to this on an audio podcast, please come find us on YouTube and subscribe to our channel. We just want a name. After that, we'll be done asking. Probably, maybe. All right.
Please.
So step 2. Having said that, step 2 is, okay, now that you have compensation separated, buyers are paying their people, sellers are paying their people. The issue there, I think, is just first principles. It's just normal human nature. If you are paying someone to help you buy something, you would never incentivize them to drive the price of that thing up, right?
Right.
So commission on the buy side will go away. It'll get replaced by something else. It'll get replaced by something like, hourly rate, right? It'll get replaced by flat fee. It'll get replaced by, maybe something like some incentive, like, look, amount of money can save me under listing. Like if it's listed for $1 million and you let me buy for 900,000, I'll give you 20% of the $100,000 difference, something like that. Obviously, as you and I both know, for the foreseeable future, you will not be going under list price. So, but it's just as a conceptual matter, I'm saying if I'm paying someone to help me buy something, I'm certainly not going to pay him on the price of the thing that I bought. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, literally incentivizing you to drive the price higher, right? Whereas if you're working for me, I want you to negotiate to drive the price lower. So I'm more likely to pay you by the hour, or something along that nature, right? So once agents start getting paid by the hour, I think that results in commission compression. Straight up, right? And it's not clear to me that you end up with something like this exclusive buyer representation type concept once you're on a per hour basis, right? Because then it's like, okay, maybe I used 5 different agents on the buy side. And those agents, what do you care? Because you're getting paid for your time, right?
Right.
So maybe you have some agent who's like an expert in negotiation. So I'm going to pay you for the negotiation piece. There's an agent who's an expert at the post-contract process. I'm going to pay you for that piece. Maybe there's an agent who really knows the neighborhood. So while I'm going around looking at houses, I'm going to pay you. Do you know what I mean? Like I could see that sort of thing happen.
It could be just a boon for real estate attorneys.
It could be. Yeah.
Right. I mean, because I know, living, it was difference coming from the West Coast to go live on the East Coast for a while when I was down in South Florida in Boca Raton. There were a lot of transactions where, they'd bring an agent on, but also a real estate attorney. Right. And I was just shocked by that. But I mean, it doesn't happen a lot on the West Coast, but out there it was like almost a common occurrence. Right. But it could be that. But I mean, I think, but so there's at a minimum.
That's step 3. Let's just be clear. That's step 3, right?
Yeah. Okay. But you say they go to hourly or they go to some sort of different thing. I still think that there's going to be agents, and this is the difference, I guess, that no, you want to work with me, it's 2%. Right? I mean, I think I think there could be a model. Some agents will still stick to a model of being in a percentage based. Even though what you're saying is true, it's just that's what they're going to command.
Sure.
Or maybe they're just going to do the math in their head and says, well, my fee for doing this house for you is going to be X. And they've already done that calculation in their head, right?
So then that flows right into step 4 though, right? Because step 4 is then we're going to see compression on the listing side as well. Why? Because now listing agents can't go to their clients and say, listen, I'm going to charge you 2.5%, but we have to offer out 2.5%. Now it's just strictly, I'm going to charge you 2.5% to list and market and sell your house for you, right? Okay. Now we have such a thing as competition though. Because some agent's going to walk into the same seller right after you leave and say, I'll do it for 1.5. And then the agent after them is going to come in and say, I'll do it for 1, right? And the agent after this said, look, I'll just do it for $5,000 flat fee.
Right. And to be fair, on both sides of this, on the listing compensation and the buyer's compensation, we already have this going on now.
Right. But it's that
brokerages, it's called Redfin, it's called those things. And still, overwhelmingly, people choose to go with the traditional model now. Why do you think that would change later on?
Because I think the steering will stop. I think the reason why.
So the steering, meaning you think that agents are, and again, I can't believe this because we talked about this before, where all the listings are online, and if an agent doesn't show a listing to one of their clients, and that client saw it on Zillow or Redfin and asked why, you're saying the agent's going to lie, and let's say the reason why the agent want to show it is because it was a lower offering, right? I just don't believe that's happening as widespread as you
There's absolutely no question it's happening right now. We know it's happening. What we don't know is how widespread is it.
Right.
We want to believe that it's a very small, tiny minority of agents who do that kind of shit. But look, it's not some secret. I mean, they're fucking publicly posting their L's online. Like, I could literally go every single day onto Facebook into some group or another and see some agent say some shit about, can you believe the nerve of this listing agent only offering out 1%? I'll be damned before I show my client this house. Some shit like, I mean, there
are some outliers there. I guess where we disagree is, like, I know we agree how prevalent it is, right? I mean, you seem to be in the more prevalent side. I'm really on the least.
No. I don't. All I'm saying is it happens. Right.
Okay.
And the perception that it happens is potentially more important. So that as a listing agent, as a buyer agent, you would go to clients and say, hey, listen, this is the way it works. And look, I'm going to do the right thing by you, but you have to understand that the industry is filled with crooks and they're going to do all this shit. So we're going to have to do these types of things. That all goes away. So going forward, it just simply becomes listing agents saying, I'm going to charge you this to provide you this service. Buyer agent saying, I'm going to charge you this to provide you these services. And then it's competition between buyer agents, amongst them, and the listing agents amongst them.
Right. So then,
go ahead.
The selling agents then, but the selling agents, it's almost the opposite, where, a commission-based thing is a good thing, right? Because it can get, it's performance based in a sense, right?
Right. I think listing side will probably still be commission based, because again, then from a seller standpoint, I want to incentivize my rep to get the prices high as possible. It's just on the buy side that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
So I think we see commission compression on the buy side through that, but on the listing side, then the commission compression happens simply through competition. Right, because Redfin will come along with 1%, somebody will come along with flat fee, somebody will come along, and then it just becomes normal competition. Like, look, I charge 2.5% because I'm offering luxury, fucking Mercedes level of service. If you want the Honda, if you want the Kia, go with that, whatever, $5,000. It's the exact same thing as lawyers. It's the exact same thing as tax prep guys. If you want H&R Block, go and do H&R Block, right? We handle sophisticated clients with sophisticated needs, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So let's jump from those. This is great because I think this is going to be way beneficial for a lot of people here, because I think the way you're explaining is fantastic. Let's jump into business models now, really talking about in the future, right? So the one that we've been talking about a lot is CoStar, right? With this, your listing, your lead, right? And as I remember our conversations with Mr. Campbell from Stevens, they look at the world differently than a lot, because they are looking at the TAM of increasing, some crazy number, because they look at it's not that you're selling subscriptions to agents, but it's also it's property, right. So in their mind, that the seller is going to pay for enhancing the property, the seller directly.
Right. That's what they believe.
That's what they believe, right? And what we talked about, in order for that to actually come to fruition, and this is where a lot of people, I think, have a disconnect. In order for that to come to fruition, you have, or others have been tying it to like this separation of buyer compensation. All right. Can you walk us through like how does that strategy work when you've just talked about where you think sellers' commission should be a commission-based, a percentage, right?
Right.
How is a seller's, a listing agent's commission should be? How is this? Why is this? How is it? When would a seller ever pay for direct, marketing on that portal?
Well, I mean, I think the examples. What's interesting about it is what CoStar is saying that they want to do is the dominant model in the rest of the world. right? It's actually what Zillow does that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, right? So if you look at REA Group in Australia,
Realtor.com, Realtor.com, other sites besides Zillow.
Yeah. Realtor, right? Both of those guys. But my point simply is, if you look at Rightmove in the UK, REA Group in Australia, other international portals, that's actually the model that they all use. Why? Because there's no such thing as buy-side compensation, right?
Okay,
so
but again, if I'm a seller, if I'm selling my house and I hire an agent to help sell my house,
right,
and they're going to be paying a commission for me, right, I'm going to be paying them commission to do so,
right.
And then the agent says to me, and again, these are just questions I get, right?
Sure. Let's role play this.
Yeah, okay, no,
you're the owner. I'm the
owner. It's like, hey, Rob, I see your signs everywhere. I want to hire you.
Yep.
What do you charge?
Okay, so I charge 3 different models, Greg.
Okay.
I charge the full service platinum, and it's going to be 3%. Okay. I charge the mid-level gold, it's 2%, and then I charge silver, that's 1%. Okay. With platinum, 3%, I will pay your CoStar fees. Because I have a special, professional deal, right? So I could probably buy those ads way cheaper than you can, right? So I'll take care of that I'll pay for it, and we're going to make up for that. At the gold level, I'm going to pay 50%. You're going to pay the other 50%. At the silver level, it's all on you, right? So you don't have to do any of this advertising, but here's my records, here's stats showing that when you do promote on the portal, your chances of selling are 20% higher, and you're going to get 6% higher results in your sale price. You pick.
Okay.
That's how that goes. Right?
Okay. So I think
CoStar will make money on that. There's no doubt.
Well, let me throw some doubt, right?
Sure.
So in this world, we all know that even if buyer compensation goes away, and again, they can do that now. I mean, if that homes.com with this new model was running, they could do that now, right?
Who is they?
The listing agent. They could have 3 levels of service.
They could, but the issue is, today it has to be like this. So today it's, hey, what do you charge? Hey, I charge 3%, 2%, 1%, Greg. But by the way, you're also going to want to offer out 2.5% to 3% to the buyer agent. Okay. Now your cost is 6%, dude.
Right. Okay, but I mean, still, if homes.com is going to launch, and they're going to launch with this model of having the seller pay for enhancing the listings. Right.
Oh, okay. So that's the next step. They can't really dominate in that space, right? Until they put a hurting on Zillow.
Right. So that's the asteroid we talked about before.
That's the asteroid we're talking about, right? And so the issue becomes this: would you pay to promote something, to bump your property up, right? In a real way. Wait, hold on. This part's important. In a real way, this is a little bit like search engine marketing, right? Where some businesses will pay a lot of money to do the paid, inclusion, paid search, right? SEM, because it has results, and they're like, we'll bid XYZ on Google. Does that work if Google's not the dominant portal with like 95% of search traffic? I don't think it does. Right? If Google only owned like a third, and Bing had a third, and whatever, DuckDuckGo has a third, then I don't think that works, right? And the situation we have in real estate today is Zillow is dominant, but what powers Zillow? What's underlying Zillow? It's 600 MLSs, right? So as a seller, why would I pay to promote my listing on one website when the entire world is going to get and see my listing for sale? Whether that's on Zillow or on coldwellbanker.com or on whatever, because the MLS exists.
Yeah, so this is, Rob, I think, honestly, this is going to be one of the best podcasts we've done here, because I've had numerous conversations. No, I'm serious, because I don't think people get this. But let me just go back.
I've only been talking about it for like 6 years.
No, but I think there's a connection here that I'm gonna highlight right now that I think people miss.
Okay.
I know how you can look at it different ways, but it's not really. CoStar doesn't win because of buyer's agent compensation going away. CoStar wins when Zillow fails.
Right.
And the instrument to make that happen is this rule change? Is this policy change? Right?
Part of it, right?
But really, if Zillow keeps existing, if Zillow keeps generating traffic,
yeah.
If they figure out a way to like, okay, well, this has gone away, we're going to change our business model. We've got all the people come here anyway. If they're able to successfully navigate through that thing, even if through these changes, and I think they're smart people, and I think they're capable of do that.
Right.
And they've got all the momentum. They've got they're not first mover status, but they're freaking, that type of player.
Yeah.
CoStar loses, even if these rule changes, make an effect. Right. It's not really the policy that makes CoStars win. It's really that policy and Zillow's failure to react to that. That's how they win. If Zillow's around here in 10 years, CoStar's not, homes.com is not around here. Right?
Or
nobody's going to be paying nobody's going to be paying to upsell no seller's going to pay directly to an agent to make their listings look pretty on homes.com if everybody's still going to fucking Zillow. They're just going to go, why would I do that? Everybody's going to go to Zillow anyway. And
I'll pay Zillow. There. Right. No, you're exactly right. So to me, the way I see this, it's not simply that. It's the logic goes like this. Okay, as long as the MLS exists, then there's no reason to promote and pay for listings on homes.com, right? There just isn't. So when the asteroid hits, the MLS will have to die.
So, I mean, that's a bold statement there. I wouldn't go that far because you're saying in order for CoStar to win, the MLS must die. I don't think so. I think that an MLS can survive, and I think we've been talking about this for a while. If it becomes just cooperation and not compensation, right? I think there's a way forward for the MLS to keep going.
I'm not even sure what that means necessarily.
Well, you know what it's called? It's called Northwest MLS, Rob.
But they have plenty of competition.
But I mean, it's Northwest MLS. This has happened. This is happening. I don't.
No, I'm not. I guess all I'm saying is, what exactly is cooperation without compensation? The idea that you're going to show the house when a buyer agent calls? Like, what are we talking about?
Well, again, let's talk to the 70,000 agents that belong to Northwest MLS. It seems to be they keep on doing it for some reason. Right? They do it because they want, accurate record of sold so they can do CMAs. They do it so that they can have one place to go to search all the properties for sale.
Is that cooperation or is that just
there's some organization that needs to do that, and the MLS, they've trusted Northwest MLS to do that. They've been doing a good job, so that keeps going forward. Now, if you want to talk about how some MLSs might go away because they're not well run, well, I think brokers will probably form something else, or those kind of organizations but not the entire industry as we know it. I mean, it's happening. This asteroid that hit has hit fucking Seattle, and fucking things are okay.
I don't think it has. I really don't, because Seattle, Northwest MLS, it's optional. You don't have to offer cooperation compensation, right?
Right.
Hello?
Yeah, you're correct. You
don't have to. But you may offer no compensation.
But why would anybody offer something they didn't feel they needed to?
Because blacklisting and steering.
Again, so it goes back to that a little bit, right?
It really does, right? And sort of the industry kind of practice. Because look, if it's just Seattle, right, and you're Redfin, and you're like, okay, well, in Seattle we don't have to, but everywhere else we're working, we have to. If you're EXP, same thing. And it's like the expectation. It's just, but what I'm saying is, if it's like an FTC regulation that comes out and says you are not allowed to offer compensation, it is against the law. Okay, now the 70,000 people in Seattle are going to look. Okay,
I mean, I
belong to this.
I understand, and I'm probably a little bit more. I understand where you're coming from, and I can see, and I'm now more understanding talking to you why other people get confused by this. Yeah. But I would say. I would look at it a little differently, and to say it this way is that in order for a model like CoStar's to win, any other model, an Australian model, what do you want to call it, to win here, Zillow has to lose. Zillow has to lose, right? And hold on, I think you think that the only reason Zillow's around is MLSs, and I don't agree with that. I think the MLSs. I don't think that MLSs have to die for CoStar to win. I think Zillow has to fuck up hugely.
So let me try
to really lose.
These are opinions weakly held, right?
No, I know. Okay, I mean, I'm telling you, Rob, this is a great conversation.
Logic in my mind, right, goes like this. It's not that Zillow has to lose; it's that the MLS have to go away, right? Because CoStar wins if it is the MLS.
Okay, so let's just separate two things. If the MLS can get over the breakage of cooperation and compensation,
and the asteroid hits and the MLS survives.
Okay, all right, and the MLS survives. That means Zillow survives.
Correct. That means
that's fine, right? But if MLS survives and Zillow fucks up,
I don't
CoStar. Hold on. If the MLS survives and Zillow fucks up because CoStar does a better job at what they're doing,
sure,
right? I still think CoStar could win with the MLS surviving. And publicly, CoStar has been saying that they want the MLS there. They want to get data from one certain source, right? So
sure.
So again, it's a little bit different what you're saying. You're saying in order for CoStar to win, the MLS must die. I think there's a scenario. The scenario is Zillow fucks up, the MLS lives, and CoStar is there to they've executed better than Zillow and they win.
So
with the MLS still intact.
Let's say the MLS
cooperation and compensation go away, but it's still there.
Gone. Right, that's all gone. Right, so that's gone. You're not allowed to share commissions. Okay, and the MLS survives. To your point, right? Okay, then why would anyone pay to promote listings on CoStar, on Homes.com? Because because that listing will be available to 1,000 websites through the MLS.
Yeah, but. Granted, but it's aggregation theory, right? It could be spread out anywhere. But if some entity like CoStar does a good job of aggregating that content and giving a good presentation of that, right? Like Amazon books are available everywhere. I mean, you could do that, but if it's very convenient, it might be a bad example there.
It's a really bad example because think of it this way. Let's say Amazon is reliant on a database. So this is actually like aggregation theory works. If you're the aggregator, if you're aggregating from another source, that's a different deal.
No, that's all that aggregators do. They're all aggregate. That's what the word aggregation means. They're coming from different sources and putting it in disparate sources and putting it in one place, right?
No,
Amazon is buying. They don't make shoes. They don't make all these things. I guess they do now, but I mean, they're aggregating all these things into one place, right? So
the
MLS industry does not have a portal.
I would argue that the MLS industry does have a portal now, and it's called Zillow.
Okay, but the MLS could have a portal then if Zillow fails, and it could be called CoStar.
Right. So all I'm saying is you have it the other way around. That's all I'm getting at, right? What you seem to be saying is if Zillow fucks up and the MLS survives, then CoStar can win, right? We're going to get to Zillow fucking up. But I'm saying even before that, but if there's no Zillow and there's an MLS, right? And that's the aggregation point. That's where all the data goes. That's where people enter listings. That's where people go to do CMS. That's where people go. And the MLS will then send its listings out to whoever wants it.
Well, not whoever wants it, to brokers or through syndication agreements.
Brokers through syndication. Then I don't think CoStar can actually win. Right. And that's doubly so when there is an aggregator already in place. Right. So maybe this is different. Maybe CoStar can do this if Zillow didn't exist. Right. So CoStar's coming in with Homes.com. And the only websites that exist are a bunch of broker websites. Exactly the way it was when Zillow appeared on the scene for the first time. Then, maybe CoStar just, we're going to aggregate everything. And then we're just going to go with your listing, your lead, and then do our business model. And Problem is that an aggregator already exists. So
that's what I've been saying.
So CoStar has to bring down their aggregator, right? Here's the thing. There's no reasonable outcome where CoStar overtakes Zillow just through normal competition, blocking and tackling.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, they're not going to hire some celebrity and then all of a sudden take over put some commercials together and take over all that traffic. Right?
They're just, and like let's say they come out with some design that is so much better than Zillow, right? And it's way user friendly and it's just a better website. That doesn't kill Zillow, right? It just hurts Zillow, right? And then Zillow goes, okay, we're going to spend more money on design and UI. We're going to copy what Homes did, right? I mean, And that natural competition.
Yeah, no, I don't see it happening ever. You're right. Yeah.
I just don't see it. In order to do it, you have to kill it somehow, right? You have to strike at its weak spot.
So let's go. Let's say you're right. Let's say you're right. Okay, so why the fuck would any MLS system do business with HomeSnap, Homes.com at all?
As opposed to who? Because think about this. This isn't CoStar or Homes.com or any of these guys coming after the MLS, right? Let's make that real clear. Those guys are fully backing the MLS. Those guys are saying, we are a friend to the MLS. We're going to do everything in the world for the MLS. They're not the ones killing it, right? The ones killing the MLS is the government, right?
Well, again, we have to posit that the basic taking away cooperation, and I think we disagree here. I think it's been shown you can break away those things. And I understand your nuance of it's, are not required to put a compensation on there.
Versus prohibited. There's a huge difference.
Again, we'll agree to disagree on that point. I think there's still a world an MLS can there's a world that the MLS could survive without having those two things, cooperation and compensation. I think there's still a role for them out there, right?
Let's get into that after. Fine. So let's just say that's all I'm saying is I want to make this really clear, because for whatever reason, there's one guy, CoStar, thinks like I'm bashing on CoStar. No, I'm making it really clear. CoStar is to be a friend to the MLS. They want to do business with the MLS. CoStar is not the one that's posing a threat to the MLS. It's the United States government that is posing a threat to the MLS. And CoStar would like to be there to be the MLS's best friend, white knight, the shoulder to cry on when the government comes in and spanks your ass. So when you say, well, why would any MLS do? Well, who are you doing business with? What's the alternative here?
Yeah. Okay. So, but in the framework that we're talking with, we both believe that if Zillow's still around, CoStar never wins.
Correct.
All right. So
correct. So let's go to step 2.
Okay. Hold on. So now you're, and presumably either CoStar doesn't believe this, right? They might be that bold and like, oh no, we got smart people. Zillow's not that big a deal. We beat him in rentals. We're going to beat him at this, right? So you have to believe that that's the sincerity of what they're coming at, and they're saying we can do this with the model that we have, with the MLS surviving, and you have to believe they're coming in genuine like that. Okay, and to me that's a stretch, right? That you and I agree that's.
What do you mean?
It's not a stretch that they're being sincere. Like it's a stretch that they're actually going to execute on that strategy. That's what I
don't understand the logic here. All I'm saying is CoStar's coming in and saying, we are friend to the MLS. We pose no threat, right? We want to work with the MLSs, right? They're not saying we're going to defend you from the federal government.
No. I'm not saying that. What I'm getting at is that, you and I both agree that if Zillow's still around, CoStar is not going to be able to execute.
No, it's they can't become REA Group if Zillow's still around.
Right. But I mean, what do they become? They could become a third tier, just a third website.
They could become Realtor.com.
Yeah, they're not going to be the winner overall. Okay, correct. That's a good clarification.
Correct.
All right.
So they need to be number one. So here's the issue. The issue is you need to find the silver bullet. Right, when you're going up against the top aggregator, and there are cases in internet history where that's happened. Right, Yahoo used to be the dominant search portal.
Yeah.
Then Google came in and murdered them, took it over.
Right.
MySpace existed, and then Facebook came in and took them out. Right. There are cases like this. So the issue is, okay, if I'm CoStar and I'm coming and saying I need to take out Zillow, right? That's our true competition. How do I take them out? They have such a lead on us. Right? They have the traffic, they have good design, they have money, they have technology, they have developers. For them to then come in, and Andy's too smart for this, in my opinion, to say, we're just going to outdo them. Nah, man, you're not going to just outdo them. You're not going to just, beat Zillow's traffic because you have a better, cleaner website or some shit. You know what I mean? Redfin's website is a lot better than Zillow's in many, many ways. You'll have Zillow people admit that, and Redfin doesn't beat Zillow, right? So you need something else. What's that something else? That's all I'm saying. Right?
Yeah, okay, I get you. So, yeah, I don't, I think that's a good thing to clarify your position there, right? You're not saying.
So let's pivot a little bit. Let's rotate, because this part's important, because there's step 2, right? And I said you reversed this. Step 2 is this. Zillow knows this. Okay? Zillow is not stupid. They see this as coming. Compensation is really under threat. They got to figure something out. Why? Because the minute that goes away, Zillow's premier agent business goes away. It evaporates. Right? Because who the hell is going to pay for buyer leads that I have to go then convince those buyers to pay me?
Right. So, I mean, you're saying that change affects Zillow's current business model.
Right? It doesn't affect their traffic, but affects their business model.
Well, they have different business models. I mean, I'm not sure. The Flex thing is a little bit different, but we'll see what happens there.
Flex is still buy side for the most part.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So all I'm saying is Zillow's whatever $1 billion a quarter IMT business is tremendously under threat. So the fuck up, as you put it, I'm not sure what you mean by. For me, it comes down to, as Zillow, can you somehow ride 2 horses with 1 ass? Right. And this is a problem that a lot of companies have when they're industry leaders. Like Kodak, for example, had a major problem with this. So, this is like famous in the annals of business history. Kodak actually came up with digital photography. It was an engineer at Kodak who came up with digital photography, right? And they couldn't do anything with it because they're such a ginormous business in their film division, right? So they just kind of didn't do much with it, and then obviously went on and killed the film division. You're muted. You're muted.
It's exactly that. It's the innovator's dilemma. There's been books written on this. Yeah,
correct. Sure. And Zillow, I think, is right square in the pinch of that right now.
Yeah,
they realize they have to pivot to the seller product somehow. They have to realize they have to do this at some point, because the threat is coming not from CoStar, not from the MLSs, but from the effing government.
Yeah,
and they know. But the question is, can they make that pivot today? What can Zillow do to make that pivot today? So let's say I'm Rich Barton. I see this coming, clear as day, right? What can I do, right? Before Q3 of last year, I think he was betting on iBuying. I think he was betting on, to sellers, we can go and say, we will buy your house for cash. Okay, you can't do that anymore. Now what? You can't do your lead, your listing, your lead, because that kills your IMT business, right? So if you're Zillow, how do you make this pivot? Right.
Yeah.
So,
no, I mean, I'm exactly sure they're all trying to figure that out, or exactly. they have figured it out, and they're just waiting to kind of implement that for sure. Right.
So here's the second challenge, though. Right. So maybe the strategy is something like this. Look, we're going to ride this buy side commission horse as long as we can. Right. When the FTC or the government comes in and smacks this down, we're going to jump ship. We're going to launch our, your listing, your lead product at that point. Okay. The issue then becomes, and this is where it's not a fuck up issue. It's not I think it's just a strategic dilemma issue, is imagine the level of communication, PR, and marketing that Zillow would have to do to overcome 10 years of Zillow hate that's been built up. Right? That is not, I don't know how, like, that's beyond blocking and tackling, right? That's beyond blocking and tackling. And
yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're successful in saying, of overcoming the whole thing of, we're not going to be a broker, and became a broker, and that didn't, and if that didn't cause people to fucking jump ship and lose their fucking minds, and they did for a while. I mean, they're remarkably resilient in that, right? So.
Sure. I'm not saying they can't do it, right? All I'm saying is I can lay out step by step, right, the strategic progress. What is central to this is that the MLS, so for Zillow, so let's put it the other way. For Zillow, they have to have the MLS survive in some fashion, right?
Well, I mean, they have to have the MLS survive to continue with the business method that they're using now.
Correct.
Yes. Right.
Right.
I mean, every business has to adjust to the market. So if their practices don't work anymore, they're going to have to shift. But in order to survive now, with the business model they have now, yes, they have to have the MLS survive. Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
They have to have the MLS survive in some fashion, or if not, at a minimum, they cannot let CoStar become the MLS.
Yeah. So just to wrap it around here. So to me, the bet that Andy Florence is making is that, and I think, what did he call it? A call option or something?
Right.
I thought it was brilliant, but he can go into this market and he could probably become a third, maybe second tier person, portal, make some money, do whatever.
Yep.
But the reason why he's going to say, okay, that's going to be okay, I'm not going to lose that much money, I'm going to lose some money, but not that much money, is because now there's an opening now where if I do this right, I have a chance of being number one. Right. So, and while you're saying, in order for them to win, the MLS must die, it's not because of,
them trying to kill
something that they're doing. It's something that the government's doing.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's something the government's doing, something the market's going to do. And CoStar will then, here's what CoStar wants to be, right? CoStar wants to be like the best friend, the boyfriend you didn't have kind of deal, right? To be the shoulder to cry on, to be the support when the floor drops out, right? And I think that's what CoStar's strategy is, which is, and we'll see. I mean, Inman's coming up. I'm real curious to see what the parties look like there, right? And Zillow would love to then be in that position. So right now, I think both of them are jockeying to be that shoulder to cry on, to be that white knight, to come in and rescue you when the government comes in and fucking smacks your shit, right?
Right.
And now the big challenge for Zillow, now the big problem for Zillow is that they have to deal with 10 years of, quite frankly, was unfair Zillow hate, right? That CoStar doesn't, right? Which is why I think, that's why I've said in previous things, I mean, right now, I think CoStar wins. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to, because Zillow's made up of really smart people, And I think they see this. If they didn't see it until now, they see it after listening to this.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty certain that they see it. The question is, what can you do about it? Because now the challenge for Zillow is, even if you do see this, are you willing to risk your $1 billion a quarter, buyer fed advertising business in order to go after sort of a listing seller side fed business that, it's real speculative until the world changes, right? So if you're not willing to do that today, then you have to be willing to and able to do it the minute that the shoe drops, right? And I don't even know what that looks like.
Yeah, and then you have NAR and all this, right? And I think they have a big stake in this, and they like to cut deals. Maybe those deals weren't, that last one was shredded up, but I think that the wild card here is that with the government, can they make it does the fact that they make compensation optional, which in your case, because it's not like removed, whatever, but is kind of a compromise, right?
Right.
Can they cut a deal like that to keep the thing going a little bit status quo, right? That's going to be where we'll see what happens, right? I mean,
we'll see what happens. I
don't even know. Do the government want to really even fuck with the real estate industry right now with everything else going on?
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's a fascinating thing, and I really appreciate, because when I have conversations with people, I get like, I just a few times got caught up in knots here. But I think people listening to this, I think this is a great conversation. They'll probably do it like I do in a lot of podcasts. I go back 30 seconds. Okay, what? I thought I got that. What was that? Yeah, and I need to hear it 7 times to kind of get it sometimes. But
well, listen, I mean, like, let me be a shill master for a second here. Like, I wrote a 100-page paper on CoStar, why they entered the real industry when it did, and I laid out most of these things, and my opinions haven't changed on most of this. I mean, it's on my website. It's a red dot report. If people really want to know, like, I think I cut the price on it too because it's old. Like,
oh, there you go.
go read that, and then, get in touch with us and see what you want to do. I'd be happy to do like a live stream Q&A just on this if people are that interested, because it seems really complicated, but it's really not. It's pretty straightforward, and it's like step by step by step by step. There are unknowns, but we know that they're unknown.
No, and I think beyond the report, I don't think I've heard a conversation or been in one that is, as we've done here, laid it out so succinctly. So this is great. Thank you, Rob.
Oh my God, can you imagine? Like, we've already gone like way over, I think. Yeah. Although one of these days, man, we got to do like some Joe Rogan style 4-hour thing, and just to see where it goes. But,
well, that's I'm going to need some better seating and some other something else to keep me going. I need more coffee then.
Yeah, but in any event, hey, if you have listened to this little chat up until now, once again, we implore you to help us get our name. So please come to visit YouTube and click subscribe so we could get our name. All right, and otherwise, thanks for joining us for this.
Thanks everybody.
Conversation. All right, bye everyone.
Bye.